This episode is a fictional narrative anthology presented in a true story style. Names and details are changed or invented for privacy and storytelling. People warn you about strangers.
They don't warn you about neighbors, because neighbors don't have to break in. Neighbors just keep showing up.
In your driveway, on your porch, in the corner of your window reflection.
And the worst part is, you can't move your fear to another street.
You have to live beside it. INTRO. Welcome back to Night Protocol Files.
Tonight is 4 confessions about the kind of horror that doesn't chase you. It waits.
It complains, it watches, it files reports, it smiles. These are Neighbor from Hell case files. The slow,
Legal, polite kind of threat that makes you question your own instincts. Headphones recommended.
Low volume, late night. And if any of this feels familiar, I'm sorry. You're not imagining it. Case file 01, the zone, the fence line. I was 22 when I rented my first little house.
Nothing fancy. Just a small place with a narrow yard and an old wooden fence. I should have taken it seriously sooner.
It was my first real taste of quiet. The kind you think you've earned.
The neighbor on my left introduced himself the first day I moved in. He didn't knock.
He stood in my driveway while I carried boxes, like he'd always belonged there.
He was an older, light-skinned Caucasian man. Late 50s, maybe. Clean shirt. "Just wanted to say hello," he said. "Welcome to the neighborhood." He shook my hand and held it a beat too long. Then he pointed at the fence. "That fence line is mine," he said casually. I laughed a little, because I thought he was joking.
He didn't laugh. He said, "People get confused." I kept telling myself it was nothing.
And then, like he was being helpful, he added, "I have the original survey." The next day, a stake appeared in my yard. A little orange flag, right near the fence.
I didn't notice it at first. I found it when I mowed.
I assumed a utility company had marked something. I ignored it. 2 days later, there were 3 stakes.
A straight line. Precise. Deliberate. I knocked on his door.
He answered immediately, like he'd been waiting behind it. He didn't invite me in.
He didn't step out. He just stood in the doorway, framed by shadow.
"I saw your stakes," I said. He nodded, pleased.
That was the mistake.
"As I mentioned," he said, "that fence line is mine." "It's been there for years," I said. "I'm renting. I don't—" "You do," he interrupted. "You're occupying it." That word. Occupying. Like I was an accident that needed correcting. I told my landlord. My landlord sighed and said,
Him. And then my landlord did the thing landlords do. He tried to make it sound small.
"He's picky," he said. "Just don't engage." I wanted to believe that.
I wanted "just don't engage" to be a spell you could cast. A week later, the fence changed. Not dramatically. 1 board was missing, then 2. then a section.
I came home from work and saw daylight where privacy used to be.
I stayed quiet. A middle-aged African-American male neighbor was in his yard with a tool belt. He didn't look guilty.
He looked justified. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Fixing," he said, "on my property."
He said it with that calm authority, like property lines were moral lines.
"I'm calling my landlord," I said. He smiled. "Do that," he said. "Call whoever makes you feel safe." Then he stepped closer to the missing fence section. Just a few inches.
But close enough that it felt like he'd crossed something.
"Also," he added, "I don't like lights on at night. It's disruptive." I stared at him.
He looked past me, through the gap, at my living room window.
I waited.
He hadn't been talking about the porch light. He'd been talking about the glow inside my house.
I went inside and closed my curtains. I hated that I did it.
I hated that I obeyed without being ordered.
That night, around 1:10 a.m., I heard a soft tapping on the outside wall.
Not loud, careful, like someone testing where studs were.
Tap, tap, tap.
I held my breath and listened.
Then it stopped. A moment later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. "No loud music, please."
I hadn't been playing music. I wasn't even watching TV. My skin prickled.
I stared at the curtains like they were thin paper. I texted back, "Who is this?" I should have taken it seriously sooner. The dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply. The next morning, I found something leaning against the fence gap. A clipboard, plastic cover, neat papers inside. Not an official clipboard, a personal one. A list, times, dates, notes. Light on, car arrived, trash out late, visitor. My throat tightened.
Because it wasn't a complaint. It was a log. And the handwriting was careful.
Patient. Like a hobby. I took photos and showed my landlord.
My landlord went quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Don't touch anything he leaves again."
Why? I asked. My landlord hesitated. Then he admitted, he used to work code enforcement.
I didn't know what that meant at the time. I learned quickly. I kept telling myself it was nothing.
Two days later, I got a notice on my door. City letterhead. A violation.
Something about weeds. Something about trash. Tiny things. Correctable things. But it wasn't about weeds.
It was about pressure. It was about proving he could reach me without stepping on my property. I called the city. They said the complaint was anonymous. Of course it was.
I started sleeping with my curtains closed. I started parking differently.
I started moving through my own home like it was a shared space. And that's when the fence stakes changed again. They moved, a few inches at a time. Always closer, always more confident. One evening I came home and saw him standing in my yard.
That was the mistake. Not his. Mine. He was holding a tape measure. He didn't act surprised to see me.
He didn't even apologize. He just looked at me and said, "I'm verifying." My mouth went dry. "Get out of my yard," I said. He smiled the way someone smiles at a child.
You don't understand, he said calmly. This is my yard. You're just using it. Then he did something that made my blood go cold.
He pointed at the front of my house, at my address numbers.
And he said, very softly, "You'd be amazed what people don't notice when you look like you belong."
That night, I packed a bag. Not because I had a plan. I stayed quiet.
Because my instincts finally stopped asking for proof. I stayed at a friend's place.
When I came back the next day, the clipboard list was gone. So were the stakes.
And the fence boards he'd removed, they were stacked neatly in his yard, like evidence put away.
I broke the lease 2 weeks late. My landlord didn't fight me. He just said, "Yeah."
That's probably best. I asked if anyone ever confronted the neighbor. My landlord looked away and said, "People tried." Then he added, "Most of them moved." Case file 02, the packages. My next neighbor wasn't subtle. She didn't hide behind rules or surveys. She hid behind politeness. I moved into an apartment complex a few years later.
Second floor. Balcony. Hallway that smelled like carpet cleaner and old heat.
Across the hall lived a woman named Marlene. That's what her welcome mat said. Her door was always cracked open a few inches, not wide enough to invite you.
Just wide enough to remind you she was listening.
The first time we spoke, she leaned into the hallway like she was stepping into a spotlight.
"Oh," she said warmly, "you're the new one. You live alone?" I paused.
People ask questions like that casually, but I felt it land. I smiled and lied.
No, I said. My partner's just not here right now. Marlene nodded slowly, like she was storing it.
The first package of mine that went missing happened a week later. It wasn't expensive.
Just a small box. The delivery app said, delivered. But my doormat was empty.
I checked the mailroom, the leasing office. Nothing. The next day, the box was sitting outside my door.
Opened, tape peeled back, but the contents were still inside. Almost like it had been inspected, then returned.
I told myself it was a mistake. Then it happened again. Another package, another delivered, another disappearance.
This time, it came back 2 days later, placed neatly against my wall. Opened.
Always opened. No note, no apology, no theft, just access. I bought a cheap little door camera.
Nothing fancy. I stuck it above my peephole. The next morning, it was gone.
Not broken, not ripped off, removed cleanly, like someone knew how. I reported it to the leasing office. They asked if I had proof. I said, it was a camera. They didn't laugh. They just looked tired. They promised they'd look into it. That night, I heard my door handle move.
Not a full turn. A test.
like someone checking if I'd remembered to lock it.
I sat up in bed, heart pounding. The hallway outside my door was quiet.
Then I heard it again. A second test. A gentle jiggle.
I grabbed my phone and started recording audio. Silence. Then,
My stomach dropped because the voice wasn't on the other side of my door.
It was close to it. Right there. As if someone's mouth was inches from the peephole. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I listened. A soft shuffle. Then footsteps away.
Slow. Unhurried. The next morning, there was a note under my door. Plain paper.
No name. Just a sentence. You don't have to make it weird.
I held the note with 2 fingers like it was contaminated. Because it wasn't about me being weird.
It was about me not cooperating. I started having packages delivered to a locker. I stopped leaving shoes outside my door. I stopped speaking in the hallway. I became quiet on purpose.
And that's when Marlene became loud. She started greeting me in front of other neighbors. Big smile, big voice. Good morning. How are you? Still living alone? And every time she asked it, I watched people in the hallway react. Some laughed.
Some ignored it. No one saw what I saw. A question designed to make me look paranoid if I didn't answer. One afternoon, I came home and my door was slightly ajar. Not wide, just cracked.
Like it hadn't clicked shut. My chest tightened. I stepped inside slowly. Everything looked normal.
But my living room smelled different. Like perfume, powdery and floral. Not mine. I walked to the kitchen and froze. On my counter was a small plastic bag. Inside it, a handful of my own mail. Opened, sorted. Like someone had been reading me.
I backed out and locked the door behind me. My hands shook so badly I dropped my keys.
I went to the leasing office again. This time I didn't ask politely. I showed them the open mail. I said, "Someone is entering my apartment." They looked uncomfortable. They said they'd call security. Security came up with me. They checked the windows, the balcony door, the locks. Everything looked fine. And then, as they were leaving, Marlene opened her door across the hall. Just a crack. Enough to show one eye and a smile.
Everything okay?
Security said, "All good," and walked away. Marlene's door stayed open a little longer than it needed to.
Then she spoke, very softly. Not to security, to me. "Lockers are inconvenient," she said.
I was helping. I stared at her. She smiled wider.
Then she closed her door, as gently as you'd close a book you plan to open again.
I moved out the next month. I told myself it was over.
Then, 2 weeks after moving, I got a package. No return address. Inside was my missing door camera.
With a sticky note attached. "You left this behind, Nell. Case file 03, Clyde, the bedroom window."
The third file is the one I still hesitate to say out loud.
Because it's the one where the neighbor didn't need my door. He had my window.
I moved into a duplex after the apartment. One side was mine.
One side was an older African-American man named Dennis. Dennis was quiet, polite, invisible, the kind of neighbor you forget to worry about. We said hello occasionally. We nodded at trash day. Then one night, I woke up to a sound outside my bedroom. A small scratch, like a branch on glass. I opened my eyes and stared into darkness. I hadn't closed my blinds. The moonlight made the room look gray and soft. The scratch came again, slower this time. Careful. I sat up and looked toward the window. Nothing, just the outline of the yard. Then I saw it. A reflection. Not in the glass, in the dark space beyond it. Faint shape, standing where there shouldn't be anyone. I froze. The shape didn't move. Then, very slowly, it leaned closer to the window. Not close enough to see a face. Just close enough to make my throat tighten. I reached for my phone with shaking hands. And the moment my screen lit up, the shape stepped back into shadow. Gone. I didn't sleep after that. I told myself it was a raccoon, a stray cat, anything. The next morning, I saw Dennis in his driveway. He waved politely. Then he said, "Sorry if my tree taps your window. Wind's been bad." My mouth went dry.
I hadn't mentioned the window. I hadn't mentioned the scratch. He said it like a pre-written excuse.
Like he was putting words in my mouth. I forced a smile and nodded.
That night, I closed the blinds. I checked the lock.
I put my phone on the pillow beside me. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up again. This time, the sound was different. A soft thump, like something touching the siding. I lay still, listened, then a whisper. Not inside the room, outside. So faint I almost didn't believe it. A breathy voice saying something I couldn't understand. I sat up slowly. The blinds were closed, but the curtain fabric moved slightly, like air was being disturbed near the window. I turned on my bedside lamp. The room filled with warm light, and immediately, outside, I heard footsteps retreating across grass. Fast, not calm, not patient, panicked, like he hadn't expected light. I got up and looked out the window. The yard was empty. But in the grass near the window, I saw a dark rectangle, a piece of cardboard. I went outside in the morning and picked it up. It was a flattened delivery box. On one side, someone had cut a clean oval hole, like a viewing port. A small peephole, but for a window. My hands shook. I threw it into a trash bag and took it to the curb. Then I called my landlord. My landlord said, "Dennis? Really?" Like it was funny. Like the kind of man who waves at trash day couldn't do something wrong. I insisted. I told him about the scratch, the whisper, the cardboard. My landlord promised to talk to him. 2 days later, Dennis knocked on my door. He held a plate of cookies. He smiled like a grandfather. "I heard you were upset. I'm sorry if I startled you." I didn't take the cookies. I stared at him. Behind his polite voice, I could hear something else.
A warning. He leaned closer and said, "Privacy is tricky in a duplex, isn't it?"
We share a lot. He said it like a joke. Then he added, very quietly, "But we don't have to make it a problem." I wanted to slam the door. I wanted to scream.
Instead, I did the thing people do when they're scared and still trying to be reasonable.
I nodded. I closed the door gently. That night, I heard the scratch again.
But it wasn't on the glass. It was on the blinds. A light, slow rub.
Like fingers brushing the slats from outside. I didn't turn on the lamp. I didn't move. I just listened until the sound stopped. And then,
From outside, I heard him speak clearly for the first time. "Good," Dennis whispered. "Stay quiet." I moved out the next week. I didn't wait for proof. I didn't wait for the landlord. I packed what I could carry and left. A month later, I drove by the duplex. A new East Asian family lived there. Kids.
Boys in the yard. The blinds in my old bedroom were open.
And in Dennis's driveway, he waved at me like nothing had ever happened. Case file 04, the taunt, the complaints. The last file is the one that taught me something I hate admitting.
Sometimes the neighbor from hell doesn't need to scare you. They just need to exhaust you.
I moved into a quiet suburban rental with a roommate. We were careful. We were polite.
we kept to ourselves. Our neighbor on the right was a Hispanic couple in their 40s.
Friendly at first. They brought over brownies. They told us where to put the trash bins.
They asked what we did for work. Normal. Then the complaints started. First it was noise. A note on the door. Please keep it down after 9. We weren't loud. We watched TV at normal volume. We shrugged. We tried to be extra quiet.
Then it was parking. Another note. Your car is too close to the line. We measured. We adjusted. We laughed about how ridiculous it was. Then it became official. An email from the property manager. Neighbor reports repeated disturbances. We were confused. We asked for details. No details, just disturbances. Then the city came, a polite inspector, a clipboard. He checked our yard, bins, our exterior lights. He found nothing. He apologized. He left. That night, our neighbor knocked, smiling. We're just trying to keep the neighborhood nice, they said. My roommate thanked them through clenched teeth.
I wanted to say something sharper, but I didn't. Because they were doing it the smart way.
They weren't threatening us. They were documenting us. And documentation is a weapon that doesn't look like one. A week later, our trash bin was tipped over. Not wind. It was placed on its side, carefully.
Like someone had laid it down. Trash spilled.
The next morning, there was a photo taped to our door. A printed photo of our messy yard.
No message. Just the photo. I stared at it, feeling my face heat with anger.
They wanted us embarrassed. They wanted us to feel watched. We cleaned up. We were good neighbors.
And the more we cooperated, the more they escalated. They started watering their lawn at night. But the sprinkler head was angled, so it sprayed our driveway, our car.
Every night, a thin film of water and dirt. We asked them politely.
They smiled and said, "Oh wow, didn't notice." The next night, it happened again.
And again. Then the porch light started. Our porch light would flicker off. Not broken.
Not dead, just off. We'd turn it on. An hour later, off again. We replaced the bulb.
Same thing. We checked the switch. Normal. Then one evening,
We came home and found the switch plate slightly loose.
One screw missing. Just enough to notice. Just enough to make you question your memory. I installed a camera. A real one this time. Wired. I pointed it at the porch.
The next day, the camera feed showed something weird. Between 1 and 1:10 a.m., the image would distort. Not fully black, just smeared, as if someone had passed a hand right over the lens. But the camera was under an eave, hard to reach, unless you were tall, or standing on something. I watched the footage again. At 1:06 a.m., a shadow rose into frame. Not a body, just the outline. Then the distortion. Then the shadow dropped away.
no clothes, nothing identifiable. Just enough to prove someone was there.
I showed the footage to the property manager. They said it was inconclusive. I called the non-emergency police line. An officer came. He listened politely. He suggested we talk it out. I wanted to scream. Because the whole point was, we couldn't talk it out.
This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a campaign. A week later, my roommate's car battery died.
Then mine died 2 days later. We thought it was coincidence.
Then I noticed my hood was slightly unlatched. Not open, just not fully closed.
Like someone had popped it and then pressed it down gently. I checked my roommate's car.
Same thing. My stomach turned. Because that wasn't annoyance. That was access.
That was someone touching our cars at night.
I stayed up one night and waited by the front window. Lights off, phone in hand.
Breathing slow. At 1:04 a.m., the porch light clicked off. At 1:06 a.m., I saw movement in the neighbor's yard. A shape crossing the grass.
Slow. Confident. They walked up our driveway like it was theirs. They stopped under our porch. And for a second, I saw the glow of a phone screen tilt up toward my camera.
Then the camera image smeared. Again. They were doing it on purpose.
They were testing how invisible they could be. I recorded everything on my phone.
But when I opened the door to confront them, the driveway was empty. No footsteps retreating.
No rush. Just absence. Like they'd never been there. That's when I realized the real trick. They weren't trying to get caught. They were trying to make me feel crazy. The next day, we got another email. Neighbor reports suspicious activity. Suspicious activity. From us.
My roommate looked at me and said, "They're gonna get us kicked out."
And the horrible part was, it was working. Not because they were right, because they were relentless.
We broke the lease. We left. We didn't win. We just escaped.
A month later, I drove past the house out of curiosity. A new tenant lived there, and on the porch, taped neatly to the door, was a printed list. A list of house rules. Noise, trash, parking, lights. It looked friendly. It looked reasonable. It looked like the beginning of a story.
Outro. If you've ever had a neighbor like this, you know the fear isn't just physical.
It's administrative. It's slow. It's the way you start living smaller.
Closing curtains, changing habits, avoiding your own porch.
Tonight's files weren't about one person. They were about proximity.
Because the scariest thing a stranger can do is show up once.
But a neighbor can show up every day.
If you want more case files like this, subscribe to Night Protocol Files.
And if your instincts keep repeating the same sentence, listen. You don't need proof to leave.
You just need permission. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next file.